This recording is in regard to the topic of head covering in Jewish law, as it relates to women. I wanted to do one on men and women, but the rabbi who I want to quote, Rabbi Yosef Messas, he deals with the topic of women and head covering head on, and so I'm going to stick there. Before I go into the sources, I want to say it's interesting that the rabbis of the Talmudic era didn't reference or source any women's voices as it relates to the laws of Sinuah, for example, the laws of modesty. There's prominent women voices or figures in the Tanakh, for example, like Devorah, or as a judge of Israel, who helps Israel come back and do Teshuvah. There's also the prophetess Huldah, who people go to for advice, and even though she lives during the time of Yirmiyahu. There's also Beruria, who wins the debate with Rabbi Meir in the Talmud in Berachot chapter 10, side A. And so it's interesting to me there were no women's voices on this topic. I think that would have been interesting. In any case, the first source I'll start with is Bemidbar chapter 5, verse 18, which is not actually a mitzvah for anybody to cover their head. Spoiler alert: there is no mitzvah in the Torah for anyone to cover their head, man or woman. But this pasuk, it actually states the following: "V'he'emid hakohen et ha'isha lifnei Adonai ufara et rosh ha'isha." After he has made the woman stand before Adonai, the priest shall bear the woman's head. This is a part of the Sotah ritual, the bitter waters test. I think it's interesting that the rabbis used this pasuk as the source for head covering. Basically, it's like they're saying she has her head uncovered as a part of this ritual. Um, so, on the flip side, you should keep your head covered, which would be an indication that you didn't have to go through this ritual. That's how I read it. To me, it doesn't sound. It sounds a little bit pejorative to use this pasuk as the source for head covering, but this is the source they use. I think you also have to misread the text because it doesn't say uncover the head. It just says to loosen the head, basically like take the braids out or make her head disheveled. But that's the source they use, and so I'm going to jump way ahead to the writings of Yosef Messas and Ossar Miktavim. He writes a teshubah on head covering. Basically, he encounters women in his region in North Africa. For context, he was born in 1892 and died in 1974. He was in North Africa and Morocco and Tlemcen in Algeria, and then in Haifa in Israel. That's where he passed in 1974. But in any case, in his writings, he states the following. He basically states that the prohibition of uncovering the head for women, married women, was strict among us from the past, basically before the French came in and basically colonized the North African area. But within a short time, the daughters of Israel basically jettisoned this practice of covering their head, and they started walking around with their head uncovered. And there was nothing that they could do about it, no way to explain that they should cover their head. Basically, women just were used to doing it. And so he put his mind to teach about them favorably. Lelamed alehem zechud. He's trying to find favor in what they're doing. For it's impossible to conceive for anything to return to the way it was. And in my approach to seeking the words of the halakhic authorities, I think he would say, unfortunately, he found only humrot al humrot ve'isur al isur. Basically, stringency on stringency, prohibition on prohibition. That's all he could find. So he goes on to say, the prohibition is not from the uncovered hair itself, but rather from the custom of the daughters of Israel, who were accustomed to covering their heads. Basically, he's saying they shouldn't have break from the customs of the women of Israel, and that the women of Israel found that covering the head was modest. And for this reason, the Torah warned all daughters of Israel not to do the opposite of the custom of the daughters of Israel in this. But if so, now that all daughters of Israel agree that there is no modesty in covering the head, the prohibition has been fundamentally uprooted and has become heter. That's the word he uses. He uses he doesn't say that, we just have to accept it. He actually says that it's permitted. So that's how he that's essentially how he concludes the whole Teshuvah. And if you want to read the whole Teshuvah, I actually have a English translation of it that I can email to you. Just send me an email. My email is in the description of the YouTube page. Hope you enjoyed. Any thoughts at all, feel free to comment. Good, bad, or indifferent. Thank you for listening. And yeah, till next time.